The fluorescent lights of St. Michael's Hospital hummed their familiar, monotonous song, casting everything in that peculiar shade of clinical white that made time feel suspended. Sarah Mitchell had worked the night shift in the emergency department for 7 years, and she thought she'd seen everything. Gunshot wounds that defied the laws of anatomy, overdoses that should have been fatal, accidents so bizarre they seemed scripted by a dark comedian. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared her for what walked through those automatic doors at 2:37 on that October morning. The patient was a young woman, maybe 25, with auburn hair matted against her pale forehead. She stumbled in alone, one hand pressed against her abdomen, the other reaching out blindly for support. Her clothes were soaked through with rain and something darker. Blood. Sarah's training kicked in immediately, her mind switching to that efficient autopilot that had saved countless lives. "We need a gurney here," Sarah called out, rushing to support the woman before she collapsed. The moment her hands made contact, Sarah felt something strange, a warmth that seemed to pulse beneath the woman's skin, like a current of electricity running just below the surface. She dismissed it as adrenaline, her own or the patient's. She couldn't be sure. Dr. Marcus Reynolds appeared within seconds, his silver-streaked hair slightly disheveled from having been on call in the doctor's lounge. He was one of the best trauma surgeons on the East Coast, a man who'd seen combat medicine in 2 wars before settling into civilian practice. His eyes, sharp and assessing, took in the patient's condition with the speed of long experience. "Stab wound, lower left quadrant," Sarah reported as they transferred the woman onto the gurney. "Pulse is thready, BP dropping. She's going into shock." "Get her to Trauma Bay 3, Marcus ordered, his hands already working to stem the bleeding. "And somebody get me O negative from the blood bank. Let's move, people." The emergency department erupted into controlled chaos, a ballet of medical professionals each performing their crucial role. Sarah stayed with the patient, holding her hand, feeling that strange warmth still radiating from her skin. The woman's eyes fluttered open, a remarkable shade of green that seemed to catch the light like gemstones. "My name is Sarah. You're safe now. We're going to take care of you," Sarah said, keeping her voice calm and steady. "Can you tell me your name?" The woman's lips moved, barely a whisper. "Elena. My name is Elena Rostova." The accent was faint but distinct, Eastern European perhaps. Russian, Sarah guessed. Elena's eyes rolled back, and her grip on Sarah's hand weakened. The monitors began their ominous chorus of alarms. "We're losing her," Marcus shouted. "Where's that blood?" A young lab technician Sarah didn't recognize came running with the bags of O negative, his face flushed with exertion. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, walking with measured, deliberate steps, was Dr. Catherine Ward, the hospital's chief hematologist. Catherine was a woman in her late 60s, with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that had witnessed the evolution of modern medicine. She rarely left her laboratory on the 3rd floor, and Sarah couldn't remember ever seeing her in the emergency department. "Stop," Catherine said, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "Don't transfuse her yet." Marcus looked up, his gloved hands still working to repair the damage to Elena's abdomen. "Catherine, with all due respect, this woman is bleeding out. I need to type her blood first," Catherine interrupted, something in her tone brooking no argument. "Trust me on this, Marcus. Give me 2 minutes." The surgeon's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Catherine moved with surprising speed, for her age, drawing a blood sample from Elena's arm with practiced efficiency. Sarah watched as the older woman held the vial up to the light, her expression unreadable. Then something changed. Catherine's face went absolutely still, her eyes widening with what could only be described as shock. In all her years at St. Michael's, Sarah had never seen Dr. Ward look shocked. Catherine turned to the lab technician, her voice low and urgent. "Run a complete blood panel, full antigen mapping, and get me Dr. Harrison from immunology. I don't care if he's asleep. Wake him up," Catherine, what's going on? Marcus demanded, his hands never stopping their delicate work. We're running out of time here. Catherine moved closer to the surgeon, speaking quietly enough that only he and Sarah could hear. Her blood type. Marcus, I've only seen this once before. Once, in all my years of practice. And that was in 1989. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in Catherine's voice, something that spoke of more than medical curiosity. Fear, perhaps, or wonder, or both. What blood type? Marcus asked, his focus still on his patient, but his attention clearly caught. She's AB negative, but that's not the unusual part, Catherine said, her fingers trembling slightly as she held the vial. She has a rare antigen combination that I've only seen once before. The markers are identical. Exactly identical. Marcus, this shouldn't be possible. Catherine, speak plainly. What are you saying? The hematologist took a deep breath. In 1989, we had a patient come through this hospital. A young woman, Russian émigré, pregnant and suffering from complications. Her blood type was remarkable, absolutely unique. We published papers on it. I kept samples for research, with her permission, of course. She had a condition that made her blood both incredibly rare and incredibly valuable for transfusion research. Sarah's grip on Elena's hand tightened unconsciously. What happened to her? The woman from 1989? Catherine's expression grew somber. She died in childbirth, both she and the child. It was tragic. We tried everything, but there were complications we couldn't foresee. The blood type, the rare antigens, they caused immune responses we didn't understand at the time. And now, 36 years later, I'm looking at blood that's identically matched. The statistical probability of this occurring naturally is astronomical. It's not just rare, it's virtually impossible. Marcus finished tying off a bleeder and looked up at Catherine with new urgency. So, what does that mean for our patient here? Can we transfuse her or not? We need matched blood, Catherine said firmly. Nothing else will work. If we give her standard O negative, her body could reject it violently. The antigens will attack it. We need to synthesize blood with the exact same markers, or... She trailed off, not wanting to finish the sentence. Or she dies, Marcus completed grimly. How long will it take to synthesize compatible blood? Hours we don't have, Catherine admitted. But there might be another option. The woman from 1989, Katrina Rostova. She had a sister. I remember because the sister donated blood during the pregnancy, trying to help. The sister's blood wasn't a perfect match, but it was close enough to buy time. If I can track her down. Elena's eyes suddenly flew open, wide with panic and something else. Recognition. Aunt Olga, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the beeping machines. Find Aunt Olga. Sarah leaned closer. Elena, is Olga your aunt? Can you tell us where to find her? But Elena's eyes had closed again, her body going limp. The monitors shrieked their warnings. Marcus worked faster, his experienced hands moving with desperate precision. Catherine was already pulling out her phone, barking orders to someone on the other end. Pull the files from 1989. Patient name Katrina Rostova. I need contact information for next of kin, specifically a sister. Yes, I know it's the middle of the night. This is life or death. Sarah stood there, still holding Elena's hand, her mind racing. The pieces were falling into place in a pattern that seemed impossible. A woman from 1989 with impossible blood. A young woman now, 36 years later, with identical blood, the same last name, Rostova. Catherine, Sarah said slowly, working through the implications. Katrina Rostova died in childbirth in 1989. You said both she and the child died. Catherine looked at her sharply. Yes, I was there. I saw it myself. But what if the child didn't die? Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. What if somehow, against all odds, the baby survived? That's impossible, Catherine said flatly. I was in the delivery room. There was no heartbeat. We tried resuscitation for over an hour. The child was stillborn. Then how do you explain this? Sarah gestured to Elena. Identical blood markers don't just appear randomly. They're inherited. If this young woman has the exact same rare blood type as Katrina Rostova, the genetic connection is undeniable. Marcus had stabilized Elena enough to step back for a moment, wiping his brow with the back of his wrist. Sarah has a point, Catherine. In all my years of medicine, I've learned that impossible usually just means we don't understand it yet. If there's even a chance that Elena here is related to your patient from 1989, we need to pursue it. Catherine's phone buzzed, and she looked down at the screen, her face paling. They found the file. Olga Volkov, last known address in Brooklyn. She moved there in 1990, after her sister's death. They're sending me the contact information now. Call her, Marcus ordered. We need her here. Even if she's not a perfect match, related blood is our best shot. While Catherine made the call, Sarah stayed with Elena, watching the young woman fight for her life. The stab wound was serious, but not immediately fatal. The real danger was the blood loss and the unique complications of Elena's rare blood type. Sarah found herself studying Elena's face, looking for resemblances to a woman she'd never met, but whose ghost seemed to hover over this entire night. There was a determination in the set of Elena's jaw, even unconscious, a strength that spoke of survival against odds. Catherine returned, her expression grave. Olga is on her way. She'll be here in 40 minutes if traffic is light. She sounded confused, frightened, but she's coming. Marcus, can you keep Elena stable that long? The surgeon nodded grimly. I'll do my best. But Catherine, I need you to be straight with me. What are we really dealing with here? Because I've got a patient with wounds that should have killed her an hour ago still clinging to life. I've got blood that shouldn't exist showing up twice in the same hospital 36 years apart. And I've got a feeling there's something you're not telling me. Catherine was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant with memory. After Katrina died, I became obsessed with understanding her blood. I spent years researching it. The antigen combination wasn't just rare, Marcus. It had properties we'd never seen before. Enhanced oxygen-carrying capacity, resistance to certain pathogens, accelerated clotting factors that somehow didn't lead to thrombosis. It was like her blood had been optimized, engineered almost, except there was no engineering involved. It was natural. Or at least, we thought it was natural. What are you suggesting? Sarah asked, though part of her already knew the answer. I'm not suggesting anything, Catherine said carefully. But there were rumors back then. The Cold War was just ending. The Soviet Union was collapsing. We had defectors coming through, refugees with stories that seemed too wild to believe. Stories about experimental programs, genetic research that pushed ethical boundaries. Katrina never spoke about her past, but she had scars. Not from accidents or normal injuries. Surgical scars. Precise, deliberate. Like someone had been studying her, not treating her. The implications hung in the air like a dark cloud. Sarah felt her stomach turn. You think she was part of some kind of experiment? I think, Catherine said slowly, that Katrina was running from something. Or someone, and I think whatever that was, it followed her all the way from Russia to a hospital bed in Philadelphia, where she died giving birth to a child who supposedly died with her. Except now, 36 years later, we have a young woman with the same last name, the same impossible blood, and the same look of someone running from shadows. Marcus returned to Elena's side, checking her vitals with renewed concern. If what you're saying is true, then this woman might not have been the victim of a random attack. This might have been targeted. As if in response to his words, the emergency department doors burst open again. 2 men in dark suits entered, their eyes scanning the room with professional efficiency. They moved like people used to being obeyed, their posture radiating authority. Sarah's instincts screamed danger. We're looking for a patient who came in about an hour ago, one of the men said, flashing a badge too quickly for anyone to read properly. Young woman stab wound. We need to speak with her immediately. Marcus stepped forward, positioning himself between the men and Elena. I'm the attending physician. The patient is in critical condition and unable to speak with anyone. You'll have to wait. I'm afraid that's not possible, the second man said, his accent slight but noticeable. Russian, Sarah realized with growing alarm. This is a matter of national security. We need access to the patient now. Unless you have a warrant or a legitimate law enforcement order, you're not going anywhere near my patient, Marcus said firmly. Hospital security. Please escort these gentlemen to the waiting area. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. Sarah saw one of the men's hands move toward his jacket, and she acted on pure instinct. She hit the emergency lockdown button on the wall, a feature installed after a shooting incident 3 years prior. Metal shutters began to descend over the trauma bay windows, and additional security personnel began flooding into the area. The two men exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Then, without another word, they turned and left, their departure as sudden as their arrival. But Sarah knew they wouldn't be gone for long. Catherine, how far away is Olga? Sarah asked urgently. Catherine checked her phone. 20 minutes, but Sarah, if those men come back with proper authorization, then we need to be ready to move Elena, Marcus said decisively. Sarah, prep for transport. We're taking her up to the ICU on the 5th floor. It's more secure, and we can control access better. Catherine, meet Olga at the entrance and bring her straight up. Don't let anyone stop you. The next 15 minutes were a blur of activity. They stabilized Elena enough for transport, moved her to the ICU, and locked down the entire floor. Sarah stayed with her patient the whole time, that strange warmth still emanating from Elena's skin. It was as if the young woman's body was fighting not just for life, but against something more, something written into her very biology. When Olga Volkov finally arrived, Sarah understood immediately where Elena got her strength. The older woman was in her 60s but moved with the vigor of someone much younger. She had the same green eyes as Elena, though hers were harder, weathered by decades of carrying secrets. The moment she saw Elena on the hospital bed, something crumbled in her expression, years of carefully maintained walls coming down in an instant. My God, Olga whispered in accented English. She looks exactly like Katrina. Exactly. Catherine guided Olga to a chair, her voice gentle. Olga, we need your help. Elena needs a blood transfusion, and you're the only person we know of who might be compatible. Will you donate? Olga's eyes never left Elena's face. Of course, anything. But first I must tell you. Dr. Ward, you told me on the phone that Elena has the same blood as Katrina. The rare type. Yes, identically matched, Catherine confirmed. Olga nodded slowly, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Then there is something you must know. Something I have kept secret for 36 years, at great cost. The child did not die. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Catherine grabbed the back of a chair for support, her face going white. That's not possible. I was there, Olga. I pronounced the child dead myself. You pronounced what you saw, Olga said softly. A baby without a heartbeat, not breathing, blue from lack of oxygen. But Katrina had told me what to expect. The child would appear dead for the first hours of life. A side effect of the blood, the genetics, whatever they had done to my sister in that facility. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I would take the baby away. Hide her. Keep her safe from them. Sarah felt her world tilting. You took Elena from the hospital? How? It was chaos, Olga said simply. Katrina was dying. Everyone was focused on trying to save her. When she finally passed, there was grief, confusion. I was holding the baby, and no one was watching me carefully. I walked out with her wrapped in my coat. I drove for hours, not knowing if she would ever take a breath. And then, just as Katrina had said when the sun rose, she gasped. Her little chest began to move. Her heart started beating. It was a miracle. It was biology we don't understand, Catherine said, her scientific mind trying to make sense of the impossible. Some kind of hibernation state, perhaps. A protective mechanism triggered by birth trauma. I raised her as my own daughter, Olga continued. I changed her name, moved constantly, always watching for any sign that they had found us. The people from the program, the ones who had experimented on Katrina. For years we were safe. Elena grew up strong, healthy, gifted. So gifted. She was brilliant, athletic. Everything came easily to her. I knew it was the blood, the changes they had made to Katrina that had passed to her child. But I thought we had escaped. I thought they had forgotten about us. What changed? Marcus asked gently. Olga's expression hardened. 6 months ago, Elena started asking questions about her mother. Real questions. She knew I wasn't her birth mother. She'd always known somehow. She wanted answers about where she came from, who she really was. I tried to protect her by keeping the truth hidden, but she was too smart. She found documents, old papers I had hidden. She learned about Katrina, about the hospital where she was born. And then she did something foolish. She tried to find out more. She started researching, asking questions in places where questions are noticed. She drew their attention, Sarah said, understanding flooding through her. Yes, Olga confirmed. 2 weeks ago, men came to our apartment. We ran, but they followed. Tonight, they caught up with us. Elena told me to run while she fought them. One had a knife. I heard her scream, and then I heard police sirens. The men fled. I wanted to go back for her. But Elena had made me promise that if anything happened, I would contact you, Dr. Ward. She had found your research papers about Katrina's blood. She believed you might help her understand what she really is. Catherine sank into a chair, her hands shaking. All these years I thought the child was dead. I mourned her along with Katrina, and now? Olga looked between the doctors. Can you save her? Can you help my Elena? Marcus moved to check Elena's vitals again. The wounds are serious but survivable if we can solve the blood problem. Catherine, if Olga's blood is even partially compatible, we might be able to buy enough time to synthesize something better. Catherine stood, her scientific resolve reasserting itself. Let's get Olga typed and cross-matched immediately. Sarah, stay with Elena. And everyone, be prepared. Those men who came earlier, they'll be back. And next time, they might not be asking permission. As Catherine led Olga away to the lab, Sarah found herself alone with Elena once more. The young woman's eyes fluttered open, consciousness returning in brief waves. Aunt Olga? Elena whispered. She's here, Sarah assured her. She's helping you. She told us everything, Elena. About your mother, about what happened. Elena's lips curved into the faintest smile. Good. I was so tired of running. So tired of not knowing what I am. You're a survivor, Sarah said firmly. Just like your mother, just like your aunt. Whatever they did to your family, whatever genetic modifications or experiments they performed, you're still human. You're still you, am I? Elena's green eyes met Sarah's, and there was an ancient weariness in them that no 25-year-old should possess. I heal faster than normal people. I can hold my breath for 10 minutes without trying. I can hear conversations from 3 rooms away. I remember everything I've ever seen, every word I've ever read. Sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and wonder what I would have been without their interference. Who would I have been if my mother had just been allowed to be normal? Sarah squeezed her hand gently. You would have been someone different, but you wouldn't have been you. And right now, Elena Rostova, the world needs you to be exactly who you are. Because whatever they made you to be, you chose to be better than that. You chose to be human. Tears slipped down Elena's cheeks. My mother. Did she suffer? I wasn't there, Sarah admitted. But Dr. Ward was. And from what she told me, your mother fought with everything she had to bring you into this world. She knew the risks. She knew that her blood, her condition, might kill her. But she chose to have you anyway. That's love, Elena. The kind of love that transcends genetics and experiments and whatever darkness your mother ran from. She loved you enough to die for you. Elena's hand gripped Sarah's tighter, that strange warmth pulsing stronger. Promise me something. If I don't make it through this... You will, Sarah interrupted. If I don't, Elena continued with gentle insistence, promise me you'll make sure Aunt Olga is safe. She sacrificed everything for me. Her whole life was spent running, hiding, protecting a child that wasn't even hers. She deserves peace. I promise, Sarah said. But you're going to make it. And you're going to give her that peace yourself. Catherine returned then, her expression cautiously optimistic. We have a match. Not perfect, but close enough. Olga's blood will work as a temporary measure. We're setting up the transfusion now. Marcus is already preparing for surgery to repair the remaining damage to your abdomen. Elena, you're going to feel weak for a while, but you're going to survive this. Elena nodded weakly. "The men who attacked me. They'll come back." "Let them," Marcus said, entering with a team of nurses. "This is a hospital, not a black site. We protect our patients here. Hospital security has been briefed, and I've made some calls to friends in the FBI. Real FBI, not whoever those imposters were. If anyone wants access to you, they're going to have to go through proper channels, and that means lawyers, warrants, and a lot of very public scrutiny. Something tells me your pursuers prefer to operate in shadows." As they prepared Elena for surgery and transfusion, Sarah stepped back, letting the specialist take over. She watched as Olga sat beside her niece holding her hand, whispering in Russian. Words of love, probably. Words of encouragement. Words that had been waiting 36 years to be spoken from one generation to another. Dr. Catherine Ward stood beside Sarah, her eyes fixed on the scene. "I was so certain she was dead. So absolutely certain. I've replayed that night in my mind 1,000 times. Katrina Rostova dying on a hospital bed, her child stillborn in my arms. It haunted me for years. Drove me to dedicate my life to understanding rare blood disorders, as if I could somehow atone for not being able to save them. And all this time the child lived, grew up, became this remarkable young woman. Sometimes," Sarah said softly, "the miracles are the ones we miss, the ones that happen when we're not looking." "Miracles," Catherine repeated, a slight smile touching her lips. "A scientist isn't supposed to believe in miracles. But I suppose when you encounter the impossible often enough, you have to expand your definition of what's possible." The surgery took 6 hours. Sarah's shift ended, but she couldn't bring herself to leave. She waited in the ICU family room with Olga, who sat ramrod straight in her chair, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes distant with memory. "Tell me about Katrina," Sarah said after a long silence. "If you want to talk about her, I mean." Olga looked at her, assessing, and then nodded. "My sister was the bravest person I ever knew. When we were young, in Russia, she was full of life. She wanted to be a dancer. Can you imagine? Such dreams we had. But then the government recruiters came. They were looking for young people with certain genetic markers, certain potentials. They promised education, opportunities, a chance to serve the motherland in special ways. Katrina was selected. I was not. For years I thought she had been sent to some elite academy. I was jealous even." Olga's voice cracked slightly. "Then, in 1988, she appeared at my door in the middle of the night. She had escaped from a facility in Siberia. She wouldn't tell me everything they had done to her, but I saw the scars. I saw the fear in her eyes, and I saw that she was pregnant. She said the father was a doctor at the facility, a man who had helped her escape because he was horrified by what the program was doing. She never saw him again. Never knew if he survived helping her. She made it all the way to America while pregnant?" Sarah asked, amazed. "It took months," Olga said. "We traveled through Eastern Europe as the Soviet system collapsed around us. It was chaos which helped us. We used false papers, bribed border guards, hid in trucks and trains. By the time we reached America, Katrina was 7 months pregnant and exhausted. But she never stopped moving, never stopped running. She knew they would come for her. For the child, the baby represented years of genetic research, a successful outcome of experiments that had killed so many others. They would never stop looking. But they lost the trail when the baby died," Sarah realized. "Yes," Olga confirmed. "After Katrina passed, after I took Elena, I made sure word got back to Russia through certain channels. The child was dead. The bloodline ended. There was nothing left to pursue. For years I thought they believed it. I thought we were free. What changed?" Olga's expression darkened. "The digital age, medical databases, research papers. Dr. Ward's publications about Katrina's rare blood type might have been scientific literature to most readers, but to the right people, they were a trail. And Elena, brilliant Elena, she started searching for her roots online. She didn't know that every search, every inquiry was like sending up a flare. By the time I realized what was happening, they had already found us." Before Sarah could respond, Dr. Reynolds emerged from the surgical wing, still in his scrubs but with the satisfied expression of a surgeon who had won his battle. "She's going to make it." The transfusion from Olga worked beautifully. Better than it should have, honestly. I've never seen a body respond to trauma repair so efficiently. Catherine was right about the accelerated healing factors. Elena's tissues were already starting to regenerate by the time we closed her up. Given a few weeks of rest, she'll be completely healed, No permanent damage. Olga stood, her composure finally cracking as tears of relief streamed down her face. Can I see her? She's in recovery now, Marcus said gently. Give her another hour to wake up from anesthesia, then you can sit with her. Nurse Mitchell, would you mind staying a bit longer? I think Elena would appreciate seeing a friendly face when she wakes up. Sarah nodded without hesitation. Of course. The hour passed slowly. Sarah used the time to file her incident reports, carefully documenting everything that had happened. She made special note of the two men who had tried to gain access to Elena, describing them in as much detail as she could remember. If Marcus had indeed contacted the FBI, they would need every piece of information. When Elena finally opened her eyes, her first word was aunt. Olga was there immediately, clasping Elena's hand, speaking rapidly in Russian. Sarah couldn't understand the words, but the emotion needed no translation. Love, relief, joy, and underneath it all, a fierce protectiveness that transcended biology. Catherine arrived shortly after, bringing with her a guest. An older man, perhaps 70, with kind eyes and the bearing of someone who had spent a lifetime in positions of authority. He carried himself with quiet confidence, and something about him made Sarah think of intelligence agencies and classified briefings. Elena, Catherine said gently, this is Dr. James Harrison. He worked with me back in 1989, and he's been helping coordinate your protection. He has some information you need to hear. Dr. Harrison pulled a chair close to Elena's bedside, his manner gentle but direct. Ms. Rostova, I'm going to tell you things that will be difficult to hear. Things about your mother, about the program she was part of, and about what you are. You deserve the truth. Elena's eyes were clear, despite the medication. Tell me everything. The program was called Krovny Zavyet, Harrison began. It means blood covenant in Russian. It was started in the late 1970s by Soviet scientists who believed they could create superior humans through genetic modification. They didn't have the tools we have now, no CRISPR or advanced gene therapy, but they had something else. Access to willing and unwilling test subjects, and absolutely no ethical oversight. He paused, letting that sink in. They focused on blood. They theorized that by modifying blood at the genetic level, they could create cascading improvements in the entire body. Enhanced oxygen delivery would improve endurance and mental acuity. Modified clotting factors could prevent death from injury. Altered immune markers could resist disease. They tested hundreds of variations on hundreds of subjects. Most died. Some survived but were damaged, and a very few, like your mother, became what they considered successes. What did they want to use us for? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the horror of what she was hearing. Initially, to create super soldiers, enhanced intelligence operatives, people who could survive and excel in extreme conditions. But as the program progressed, some of the scientists became obsessed with the idea of human evolution itself. They believed they were creating the next step in human development. And my father? My mother said he was a doctor there. Harrison's expression softened with something like regret. Dr. Alexei Sokolov. He was one of the program's lead researchers. Brilliant, ethical, conflicted. He fell in love with your mother despite knowing it was forbidden. When he realized that the program was preparing to take Katrina's child at birth to continue the experiments into the next generation, he helped her escape. He was executed for treason. I'm sorry. Elena absorbed this quietly, her hand tightening around Olga's. So I'm the product of these experiments. That's what I am. No, Harrison said firmly. You're the daughter of two incredibly brave people who chose love and humanity over ideology and ambition. The experiments gave you certain advantages, certain capabilities that most humans don't possess. But who you are, your choices, your character, that's all you. I've been tracking the remnants of the Blood Covenant program for decades. Most of the subjects died. The few who survived were hunted down or chose to end their own lives rather than be recaptured. You and your mother were the only ones who escaped and lived. That makes you extraordinary in ways that have nothing to do with genetics. The men who attacked me, Elena said. Are they from the program? The program officially ended when the Soviet Union collapsed, Harrison explained. But some of the scientists continued their work privately, funded by people who saw commercial or military applications. They've been searching for surviving subjects, trying to obtain blood samples, tissue samples, anything they could use to continue their research. You represent 36 years of unknown development. To them, you're not a person. You're data. So they'll never stop looking for me. Harrison glanced at Catherine, some silent communication passing between them. That's where you're wrong. They were looking for you because they thought you were alone, unprotected, unaware of your own value. But now you're in a hospital with witnesses, documentation, and federal attention. I've already briefed my contacts at the FBI. The men who attacked you are being actively hunted. More importantly, Dr. Ward and I are going to publish a paper. Catherine picked up the thread. We're going to document your blood type, your unique markers, in full scientific detail. We're going to make the information public. Once it's out there, once the scientific community knows about it, you stop being a secret worth killing for. You become a medical curiosity, certainly, but one that's studied openly, not in underground laboratories. You're going to make me famous? Elena asked with a weak smile. We're going to make you safe, Catherine corrected. Secrets can be killed. Public knowledge can't be silenced. There will be attention, certainly. Medical researchers will want to study your blood, understand the mechanisms at work, but it will all be voluntary, all ethical, all above board. And in the meantime, you get to decide who you want to be. Not what genetics made you, but who you choose to become. Sarah watched Elena process this information, saw the fear and hope warring in her expression. Finally, the young woman looked at her aunt. What do you think? Elena asked in Russian. Olga responded in the same language, and though Sarah couldn't understand the words, she understood the sentiment. Safety, freedom, choice, all the things that Katrina had run toward and died to give her daughter. Okay, Elena said in English. Let's do it. Let's tell the world. Over the next few weeks, Sarah watched Elena's story unfold in ways she never could have imagined. Dr. Ward's paper was published in The Lancet, one of the world's most prestigious medical journals. Unique Hereditary Blood Antigen Complex, a case study in genetic enhancement, became one of the most downloaded articles in the journal's history. The media attention was intense, but not overwhelming, largely because Harrison had called in favors to keep the more sensationalist outlets at bay. Elena became known in medical circles as the woman with the rarest blood type on Earth, a living legacy of Cold War genetic experiments. She gave carefully controlled interviews to scientific publications, always accompanied by Catherine or Harrison, always maintaining her privacy, while sharing enough to satisfy curiosity. The men who had attacked her were arrested trying to flee the country. They turned out to be private contractors working for a pharmaceutical corporation that had acquired the research from the defunct Blood Covenant program. When faced with federal charges, including attempted murder and conspiracy, they cooperated fully, providing names and documentation that led to the dismantling of an entire network of black market genetic research. Harrison told Sarah later that it was the breakthrough he'd been working toward for 20 years. Elena recovered with remarkable speed, just as Marcus had predicted. Within 3 weeks, she was walking the hospital corridors, chatting with nurses, and charming everyone she met. She had her mother's determination, but also a lightness that Olga said came from finally being free of secrets. No more hiding, no more running, no more wondering what she was. Sarah had expected Elena to leave Philadelphia once she was discharged, to disappear back into whatever life she'd been building before everything changed. But on Elena's last day in the hospital, she surprised everyone. I want to go to medical school, Elena announced, sitting in the ICU family room with Sarah, Catherine, Marcus, and Olga. Dr. Ward, you said researchers will want to study my blood, understand how it works. Who better to lead that research than me? I have a degree in biochemistry already. I've been working in a lab for the past 2 years, actually. I understand the science. And I understand what it means to be treated as data instead of a person. I can make sure the research is done ethically, that it helps people instead of being weaponized. Catherine's eyes lit up. You'd be an extraordinary researcher, and if you're willing, we could establish a foundation, the Katrina Rostova Foundation for Ethical Genetic Research. We could use the attention your case has generated to fund studies into rare blood disorders, genetic therapies, all the things your mother's biology could teach us. I like that, Elena said softly. Something good from all of this. A legacy that isn't about experiments and weapons, but about healing. You'd stay in Philadelphia? Sarah asked, surprised by how much she hoped the answer was yes. If Aunt Olga agrees, Elena said, looking at the older woman. We've spent our whole lives running, Maybe it's time to plant roots, build something permanent. Olga's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Your mother would be so proud. She would be so very proud of the woman you've become. In the months that followed, Sarah watched Elena transform from a patient into a colleague, and eventually into a friend. Elena enrolled in a graduate program at the University of Pennsylvania, working on an accelerated track toward both a medical degree and a PhD in hematology. She spent her free time at St. Michael's, volunteering in the emergency department, helping researchers understand her unique physiology, and gradually becoming part of the hospital's extended family, the Katrina Rostova Foundation, launched with substantial funding from several pharmaceutical companies eager to demonstrate their commitment to ethical research after the scandal. Catherine served as the scientific director, with Elena as a research fellow. They published paper after paper, each one peeling back another layer of mystery surrounding Elena's blood. They discovered that her enhanced healing wasn't magic or science fiction, but a combination of factors. Her blood carried oxygen more efficiently, reducing tissue damage from trauma. Her clotting factors responded faster, but dissolved more readily, preventing the dangerous clots that plagued normal rapid healing mechanisms. Her immune system was hyperactive but precisely calibrated, attacking threats without triggering the autoimmune responses that should have resulted from such heightened activity. Each discovery opened new avenues for medical treatment. Burn victims received transfusions of synthetic blood modeled on Elena's, and their recovery times improved dramatically. Patients with clotting disorders were treated with therapies derived from understanding her unique factors. Immune therapies for cancer were refined based on studying how her system distinguished threats from healthy tissue. Within 2 years, treatments based on Elena's biology had saved thousands of lives. The woman who had once been hunted as a secret weapon had become a beacon of hope for people around the world. Sarah was there for all of it, watching with a pride that surprised her with its intensity. She and Elena had formed a bond that transcended the circumstances of their meeting. They met for coffee every Tuesday, Elena sharing stories about her research and classes, Sarah talking about her patients and the continuing chaos of emergency medicine. They were different people from different worlds, brought together by one impossible night and held together by genuine affection. Olga settled into Philadelphia life with the contentment of someone who had finally laid down a heavy burden. She opened a small bakery in South Philadelphia, serving Russian pastries and becoming a beloved figure in the neighborhood. She and Catherine became unlikely friends, the two women who had been there for Katrina's last moments, finding solace in each other's company. Dr. Harrison visited occasionally, checking in on his most successful case, as he called Elena. He was retired now, but he told Sarah once that watching Elena thrive made all his years of chasing shadows worthwhile. Most of my career was spent documenting atrocities and hunting monsters, he said. Elena represents something different. Hope. The possibility that even the worst intentions can give birth to something beautiful if given the right nurturing. 3 years after that October night, Sarah attended Elena's white coat ceremony as she officially became a medical student. Watching the young woman stand on stage, reciting the Hippocratic Oath, Sarah thought about everything that had led to this moment. A desperate escape from a Soviet research facility, a woman dying to give her child a chance, 36 years of hiding and protection, one violent night that could have ended in tragedy. And now this. Elena Rostova, MD candidate, standing in front of her peers, promising to dedicate her life to healing and ethical practice. The daughter of experiments choosing to use her gifts not as weapons but as bridges between what humans are and what they could be. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Elena found Sarah in the crowd, pulling her into a tight hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything. For believing I was worth saving." "You were never just worth saving," Sarah said, pulling back to look Elena in the eyes. "You were worth celebrating. You are worth celebrating." "I want to show you something," Elena said, leading Sarah to a quiet corner. She pulled out her phone and showed her a photo. It was old, faded, but carefully preserved. A young woman with auburn hair and green eyes, smiling at the camera with a hand on her swollen belly. "Aunt Olga finally gave this to me last week," Elena explained. "It's my mother, the only picture that survived our escape. She looks happy, doesn't she? Despite everything. Despite knowing she might not survive the birth, she looks happy. She looks like she's looking at her future, Sarah said softly. And what a future you've given her, Elena. Everything she died to make possible. Elena tucked the phone away carefully. I think about her every day, about what she endured to bring me into this world, about the courage it took to run, to hide, to give birth, knowing it might kill her. And I think about Aunt Olga, raising a child that wasn't hers, living in fear for decades, sacrificing a normal life to keep me safe. How do you live up to that kind of love? You don't live up to it, Sarah said. You live into it. You let it shape you, guide you, inspire you, and you pass it forward. That's what you're doing, Elena. Every patient you'll treat, every life you'll save with the research from your blood, every student you'll mentor someday. That's Katrina's love and Olga's love, continuing forward through time. I like that, Elena said, her eyes bright. Living into love rather than living up to it. That feels achievable. Human. You are human, Sarah reminded her gently. Never forget that. Enhanced biology, unique genetics, none of that changes the fundamental truth. You laugh, you cry, you hope and fear and dream. You love and are loved. That's what makes you human. That's what your mother knew when she chose to have you despite all the risks. She saw past the experiments and the modifications to the essential truth. You were her daughter. Her baby. Her love made flesh. Elena's composure cracked slightly, tears slipping down her cheeks. I wish she could have known me. Really known me, not just as a baby she held for a few moments, but as a person. She knew you, Sarah said with certainty. Maybe not the details of who you'd become, but the essence. She knew you'd be strong. She knew you'd be brave. She knew you'd choose love over fear, humanity over power. How do I know? Because those were her choices. She passed them to you, written in more than just blood, written in the example she set. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the celebration around them. Catherine was talking animatedly with some faculty members, probably already pitching research collaborations. Olga was holding court with a group of other parents, her English still heavily accented but her pride unmistakable. Marcus was there too, having taken the afternoon off from his surgical schedule to attend. He caught Sarah's eye and raised his glass in a silent toast. You know what the strangest part of all this is? Elena said after a while. I spent my whole life feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. Too Russian for America. Too American for the Russian emigre community. Too smart, too strong, too different. I thought the enhanced biology made me alien. But now, understanding where I come from, knowing my story, I feel more human than I ever have. The modifications don't define me. They're just part of my history. My choices define me. My actions. My love. That's the secret they never understood, Sarah said. The scientists in the Blood Covenant program. They thought they were creating something beyond human by modifying genetics. But humanity isn't in our DNA. It's in our choices, our compassion, our capacity to love beyond logic or self-interest. Your mother proved that when she chose to bring you into the world. Your aunt proved that when she chose to raise you. And you prove it every day when you choose to use your gifts to heal rather than harm. Elena nodded slowly, absorbing this. I'm going to include that in my research philosophy statement. The ethics proposal for the foundation, because as we develop treatments based on my biology, as we potentially enable other people to have enhanced healing or stronger immune systems, we need to remember that lesson. Enhancement doesn't make anyone more human. It might make them healthier or stronger, but humanity is something else entirely. You're going to do amazing things, Sarah said with conviction. I knew it the moment I first held your hand in that emergency room. You had been stabbed, you were bleeding out, you were terrified. But even then, there was something in your eyes. Determination, hope, humanity. Whatever genetics gave you, those qualities are all your own. The reception continued around them, but Sarah found herself lost in thought, marveling at the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. 7 years of night shifts in an emergency department, thousands of patients treated and released, and yet this one case had changed everything. Not just for Elena, but for Sarah herself. She had become part of something larger than routine medical care. She had witnessed a resurrection of sorts, a woman literally reborn from official death records. She had helped protect a miracle, nurture it, watch it flourish into something beautiful. In a career that often felt like an endless battle against entropy and death, Elena represented something different: hope, possibility, the stubborn human capacity to survive and transcend even the most calculated cruelty. Dr. Catherine Ward appeared at Sarah's elbow, pressing a glass of champagne into her hand. "Penny for your thoughts, Nurse Mitchell." "I was just thinking about that night," Sarah admitted. 3 years ago, when Elena came through those doors, bleeding and desperate. If any one thing had gone differently, if I hadn't pressed the lockdown button, if you hadn't recognized the blood type, if Olga hadn't kept the secret all those years, we wouldn't be standing here now. "But we are standing here," Catherine said firmly. "And that's what matters. The path that led us here is less important than where we've arrived. Elena has a future now, a real one. She's not running, not hiding, not being hunted. She's living. That's the miracle." "You never gave up on understanding Katrina's blood," Sarah observed. 36 years of research, all because you couldn't save one patient." Catherine smiled wryly. "Guilt is a powerful motivator in medicine. But it was more than that. Katrina's blood represented something I couldn't explain, and I hate things I can't explain. I dedicated my career to understanding it, and in doing so, I suppose I was honoring her, trying to make her death mean something. And now her death has saved thousands," Sarah said, "through Elena, through the research, through the foundation, through love," Catherine added softly. "Katrina loved Elena enough to die for her. Olga loved Elena enough to sacrifice her entire life, and Elena loves humanity enough to share her gifts freely. That's the through line that connects everything. Not genetics, not science. Love." Sarah raised her glass. "To love, then, the strongest force in the universe. Stronger than genetics, stronger than cruelty, stronger than fear." Catherine clinked her glass against Sarah's. "To love. And to the women who prove its power every day." As the evening wore on, Sarah found herself in conversation with Harrison, who was nursing a scotch and watching the festivities with the satisfied air of a man whose life's work had found unexpected validation. "You know what keeps me up at night?" he said without preamble. "Not the ones who got away, not the cases I never solved. It's the ones I couldn't save. The subjects of programs like Blood Covenant who died before I could reach them. Katrina haunted me for years. I knew about her, had tracked her escape, but I lost her trail in Eastern Europe. By the time I found out she had made it to America, she was already dead." He paused, staring into his glass. "Or so I thought. Learning that Elena survived, that Olga had hidden her all these years. It was like being given an unexpected reprieve, a chance to get it right, to protect the next generation from the sins of the previous one." "You did protect her," Sarah said gently. "Maybe not in the way you originally intended, but you helped keep her safe. Your contacts at the FBI, your knowledge of the program, it all contributed to her survival. And now she's going to be a doctor," Harrison said with a shake of his head. "A healer, using the very biology that was meant to make her a weapon to save lives instead. That's not justice exactly, but it's something better. It's redemption. For her or for you?" Sarah asked perceptively. Harrison smiled faintly. "Maybe both. Maybe that's how healing works. The healer and the healed, both transformed by the act of choosing compassion over cruelty." Across the room, Elena laughed at something Olga said, her face bright with genuine joy. She looked so normal in that moment, so perfectly ordinary, that it was hard to imagine the extraordinary biology beneath her skin or the dark history written in her genes. But that was the point, Sarah realized. Elena had chosen to be ordinary, to be human, to be part of the world rather than apart from it. As the reception wound down, Elena gathered her closest supporters for a photo. Sarah, Catherine, Marcus, Olga, and Harrison. 5 people from vastly different backgrounds, brought together by one impossible night and bound together by shared purpose. "This is my family," Elena said, as someone snapped the picture. "Not the family genetics gave me, but the family love created. Thank you, all of you, for seeing me when I was invisible, for protecting me when I was vulnerable, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. In her years as a nurse, she had been thanked thousands of times by grateful patients and families. But this felt different. This felt like standing at the intersection of past and future, of horror and hope, of death and life. She had been part of something meaningful, something that would ripple forward through time in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. As they left the reception hall that evening, Sarah found herself walking with Elena through the Philadelphia twilight. The city was alive with evening sounds, traffic, voices, the distant wail of an ambulance that made Sarah's heart twinge with professional sympathy for whoever was responding to that call. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked suddenly. "Choosing to be a nurse instead of a doctor?" "You're brilliant, Sarah. You could have gone to medical school, become a surgeon, had more prestige, more money." Sarah considered the question carefully. No regrets. I chose nursing because I wanted to be the person who holds hands, who sees patients as people first and conditions second. Doctors fix problems, and that's vital, essential work. But nurses, we bear witness. We're there for the moments that don't make it into medical charts. The fear, the hope, the small victories and quiet defeats. I was there when you first opened your eyes. I held your hand when you were terrified. That matters to me more than any title or paycheck. I want to be that kind of doctor, Elena said earnestly. The kind who remembers that medicine is about people, not just problems to solve. Will you help me remember that? When I get caught up in research and data and abstractions, will you remind me what this is really about? Always, Sarah promised. That's what friends do. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, they reached the corner where they would part ways, Sarah heading to her apartment, Elena returning to Olga's house where she still lived despite being fully independent. Some bonds transcended necessity. "Sarah," Elena said, hesitating as if weighing whether to continue. "There's something I never told anyone, not even Aunt Olga. That night when I was bleeding out on the hospital floor, I felt myself dying. Really dying. And I wasn't afraid. I thought, this is okay. I lived, I loved. That's enough. But then I heard your voice. You told me I was safe, that you'd take care of me, and something in me decided to fight, to stay. You saved my life not just with medicine, but with compassion, with recognition of my humanity at a moment when I felt most like a thing, a problem, a genetic anomaly. You saw me as Elena, just Elena, and that made all the difference." Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Elena, I know," Elena interrupted gently. "You were just doing your job. But jobs are performed by people, and people make choices about how they perform them. You chose kindness. You chose to see me, and I'm here because of that choice." She hugged Sarah tightly, then stepped back with a smile. "I'll see you Tuesday for coffee?" "Tuesday for coffee," Sarah confirmed. "And Elena, I saw you because you were worth seeing. You are worth seeing. Never forget that." Elena nodded, her eyes bright, and then she was walking away, disappearing into the Philadelphia evening. Sarah watched her go. This impossible young woman with her extraordinary blood and her ordinary dreams, and felt a profound sense of gratitude for the random chance that had brought Elena through St. Michael's doors on that October night 3 years ago. The world was full of miracles, Sarah reflected as she turned toward home. Not the flashy kind, not burning bushes or parted seas, but small human miracles. The miracle of survival, the miracle of love, the miracle of choosing compassion over cruelty, hope over despair, humanity over power. Elena Rostova was one of those miracles. And Sarah had been privileged to witness her resurrection, her transformation, her blossoming into the remarkable woman she was becoming. Whatever the future held, and Sarah suspected it held greatness for Elena, achievements that would echo through medical history. This moment was enough. This knowledge that one life, properly nurtured and protected, could change the world. The ambulance siren that had been distant grew louder, and Sarah saw the flashing lights approaching. Professional instinct made her step to the curb, ready to help if needed. But the ambulance passed, racing toward its destination, carrying someone else's emergency, someone else's crisis, someone else's miracle in the making. Sarah thought about all the patients she'd treated over the years, all the lives she'd touched in large ways and small. Most of them she would never see again, never know their outcomes, never learn whether they thrived or simply survived. But Elena was different. Elena was a story Sarah would witness to the end, whatever that end might be. And what a story it was. A daughter of experiments who chose to become an instrument of healing, a woman who could have used her enhanced abilities for personal gain, but instead dedicated them to serving others. A survivor who transformed trauma into purpose, fear into courage, secrets into truth. If someone had told Sarah 7 years ago, when she first started working night shifts at St. Michael's, that she would one day be part of unraveling a Cold War genetic conspiracy and helping to save a woman who wasn't supposed to exist, she would have laughed. Life as a nurse was usually more mundane. Broken bones, heart attacks, overdoses, the routine emergencies that filled emergency departments every night. But occasionally, very occasionally, something extraordinary walked through those doors. And when it did, all you could do was your best. Hold the hand, show the compassion, bear witness to the miracle. Trust that love, in all its forms, was stronger than any darkness humanity could create. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Thank you for walking with me tonight. Thank you for everything. You're family now, whether you like it or not." Sarah smiled, typing back, "I like it. See you Tuesday." As she continued toward home, Sarah found herself thinking about Catherine's words. Through love, that's the through line that connects everything. It was true. Katrina's love for her unborn child, Olga's love for her sister and niece, Elena's love for humanity, Sarah's love for her patients, Marcus's love for the practice of medicine, Catherine's love for understanding and truth, Harrison's love for justice. Love in all its varied forms, creating ripples that spread outward through time, touching lives in ways both seen and unseen. That was the real story here, not the genetic modifications or the Cold War conspiracies, or even the medical breakthroughs. The story was about people choosing to love when it would have been easier to hate, to protect when it would have been safer to abandon, to hope when despair would have been more rational. Sarah reached her apartment, climbed the stairs, and let herself into her familiar space. She poured herself a glass of wine and stood at her window, looking out over the Philadelphia night. Somewhere out there, Elena was with Olga, probably sharing dinner and conversation, living the normal life that had been denied them for so long. Somewhere else, Catherine was likely still at her lab, running analyses, chasing understanding, honoring Katrina's memory with every discovery. Marcus was probably back at the hospital, saving another life, adding another chapter to his long career of healing. Harrison was perhaps at home, finally at peace with at least one of his haunting failures turned into success. And Sarah was here, a night shift nurse with an extraordinary story to carry forward. She wouldn't tell it to many people. Patient confidentiality and respect for Elena's privacy ensured that. But she would carry it nonetheless, a reminder of why she had chosen this profession, why she showed up shift after shift to bear witness to humanity at its most vulnerable. Because you never knew when the miracle would walk through the door. You never knew when your compassion would save more than a life. It might save a soul, a future, a possibility. You never knew when holding a hand and offering comfort would be the thing that made someone choose to fight, to stay, to live. Sarah raised her glass to the window, to the city, to the universe that had conspired to bring Elena Rostova to St. Michael's Hospital on that October night 3 years ago. To love, she whispered, to miracles, to the extraordinary hidden in the ordinary, to every patient I'll never see again, and the few I'll have the privilege of watching flourish, to Katrina, who loved fiercely enough to die for it, to Olga, who loved selflessly enough to sacrifice everything, to Elena, who loves broadly enough to share her gifts with the world, and to all of us who choose compassion over cruelty, hope over despair, humanity over power. The city lights twinkled back at her, indifferent and beautiful, full of stories she would never know, and miracles she would never witness. But that was okay. She had witnessed this one. She had been part of this impossible, beautiful, redemptive story of a woman who wasn't supposed to exist, creating a future brighter than anyone could have imagined. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. And so, here we are at the end of this remarkable journey, a story that began with blood and fear and secrets, and ended with hope and love and possibilities. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the power of compassion, the strength of love, or the resilience of the human spirit, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What part of Elena's journey resonated most with you? Have you ever experienced a moment where someone's simple act of kindness changed everything? Share your stories. They matter. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more stories that explore the extraordinary within the ordinary, the human within the exceptional, please consider subscribing. Every story I share is crafted with care, designed to remind us that even in our darkest moments, love finds a way. Until next time, remember, you never know when your moment of compassion might be the miracle someone needs to choose hope over despair, life over death, love over fear. Be that miracle for someone. Be the hand that holds. Be the voice that comforts. Be the witness to their humanity. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being part of this story. Even as an audience, even as a listener, your presence matters more than you know.